Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true disturbing stories about being home alone in the Appalachian woods. One witness saw a pale figure crawl under the porch, whispering from the floorboards. Another heard a soft knock on a second-story window and saw fingers tapping from outside. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share this with your friends, and let me know where you're watching from. Thanks. Now let's get into it. I was 16 the first time my parents left me home alone overnight. We lived in this 2-story place outside a town called Wilton Hollow in West Virginia. You wouldn't find it on most maps. You drive 15 minutes out of town, the road turns to gravel, then dirt, and then it feels like you've left society entirely. No traffic, no streetlights, no neighbors, just trees that don't seem to end. My dad liked to say we didn't live in the woods. We lived inside them, like God misplaced us. So that weekend, my parents had to drive down to Georgia for a funeral. I don't even remember whose, some distant family member I barely knew. My mom asked if I wanted to come. I shrugged and said I'd rather stay. She gave me this long look, like she was waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she just nodded and said they'd be back late. My job was to keep the house standing. No parties, no fires. Keep the doors locked. That was it. At first, it felt like the best kind of freedom. The fridge was full, the microwave was mine, and nobody was around to question my decisions, like eating cold lasagna out of the pan or drinking 4 cans of Dr. Pepper in a row. I claimed the basement couch as my throne and parked there with my laptop, snacks, and this horrible throw blanket that smelled like feet but was too soft to give up. The Wi-Fi was fast. The quiet didn't bother me. If anything, it was nice. No interruptions, no yelling through the floorboards to do chores, just me, the internet, and my total lack of pants. Around 11, I was still watching videos, switching between game streams and some dumb horror compilation, when the Wi-Fi blinked out. It didn't slow down. It died, just poof. One second I'm watching some guy scream at a jump scare, the next I'm staring at a no internet screen like it personally betrayed me. I waited. Sometimes it came back. After a few minutes, nothing. I went upstairs to check the router. Lights were on. It looked totally fine. I unplugged it, counted to 30, plugged it back in. Still nothing. That's when I remembered. No Wi-Fi means no texting, and we barely got any cell service inside the house. You had to go outside on the back deck, wave your phone in the air like you were summoning a signal. So I slid open the deck door and stepped out. It was dead quiet. I held my phone up, walked around a little, leaned on the railing. Eventually, I got 1 bar, barely. I tried texting my mom. Wi-Fi out, router looks fine, everything else okay. It just sat there. Sending. Then I heard them. Voices. At first, I thought it was a video playing in my pocket or something, but my phone was on mute. The voices were real, coming from the woods behind the house. Not shouting, more like a conversation. Just loud enough to catch pieces of the sound, not the words. I leaned forward over the railing. 2 voices, one of them high-pitched, almost screechy, like someone who's constantly annoyed. The other slow, like he had to chew on each word before letting it go. I couldn't tell where exactly they were, maybe 30 yards out, maybe more, just deep enough that I couldn't see anything through the trees. I stood there listening for a good 30 seconds, phone forgotten. Then I flipped on the deck light. The second I did, the voices stopped, like someone hit a mute button. I didn't even realize how still everything was until that moment. I waited. Not moving, not breathing too loudly. Nothing moved in the trees, no snapping twigs, no footsteps, just nothing. I went back inside and locked the door, dropped the metal rod in place that my dad had installed, his hillbilly security system, he called it. I told myself it was probably someone passing through, maybe a couple of idiots hunting on private land. Still, I walked through the whole house and made sure every door was locked. Every window latched. Then I went back down to the basement and sat on the couch again. TV still frozen on the same error message. That's when I heard the deck door rattle. One quick shake, like someone grabbed the handle and tested it. I didn't move, just sat there listening, heart suddenly punching. Nothing else happened. After a few minutes, I crept back upstairs. The door was shut, still locked. The rod was still wedged in place. I peered out the glass. The deck light had gone out. I didn't turn it back on. I figured maybe it was just the wind or the door settling, even though deep down, I knew it wasn't. I tried sleeping on the basement couch after that, but I couldn't get comfortable. I kept hearing little sounds, floor creaks, the fridge kicking on, a faint tap that might have been a branch on the siding. Every little thing made me sit up. At exactly 1:32 a.m., I heard a door shut, not just any door, the sliding one upstairs. It made this unmistakable thud when it closed, like the frame didn't quite fit. I grabbed the bat from behind the couch, one of those cheap aluminum ones that makes a metallic ring if you tap it too hard. It was mostly for show, but in that moment, it felt like a sword. I went up the stairs as quietly as I could, step by step. My hands were sweating. I flicked on the kitchen light. The deck door was closed, still locked, rod in place, but there were muddy footprints on the kitchen tile. Little ones, barefoot. They started right at the sliding door and went a few steps into the kitchen. Then they just stopped. I didn't even try to make sense of it. I just started searching. Closet, empty. Pantry, nothing. Behind the table, under the couch. Even opened the door to the basement and stared down. Every room was still. Then I turned toward the hallway, and I saw her. She was just standing there. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, in a white dress, long, tangled hair. Her skin looked pale, like she hadn't been outside in months. Her arms were hanging limp by her sides. She wasn't crying or scared or anything. Her face was completely blank. She looked at me like I wasn't even a person, like I was a chair or a lamp. I tried to say something, but nothing came out. Before I could think, she turned and walked down the hallway. I followed, turned the corner, and she was gone. All the bedroom doors were shut. I opened each one, flipped every light. Empty. Bathroom too. I even climbed up and opened the attic hatch, stared into it for a solid minute. It was quiet. I went back to the kitchen. The footprints were gone. Not smudged, not faded, just not there. Like they'd never been there in the first place. I pulled out my phone. Still no signal. I opened the camera and shot a quick video. Just the door, the kitchen, my voice saying the time and date. Then I went to my bedroom, pushed the desk in front of the door, and sat down on the floor with the bat. I stayed there until morning. Didn't sleep, barely moved. When the sun came up, I checked the house again. Everything was normal. No footprints, door still locked, rod still there. I grabbed my phone to look at the video. It was gone, not corrupted, not deleted, just not in the gallery at all. I spent all Sunday on the deck. Wouldn't go back inside. I kept my phone in the air until I finally got a message through to my mom. When she replied, she didn't even ask what happened, just told me to pack a bag and wait on the porch. They got back around 4. My dad didn't say a word, just opened the back door and looked at me. My mom asked if I was okay. I nodded. That night, I slept in their room. Nobody made me. I just did. The next morning, my dad nailed the basement window shut, added 2 new deadbolts to the back door. When I asked why, he just said, "You're not the only one who heard things." My name's Jared. I was 20 when this happened. My cousin Nate had just bought a house up in Mercer County. Pretty remote spot tucked away on a ridge about an hour outside town. He and his girlfriend Emma were headed to Gulf Shores for 2 weeks, and he asked if I could house sit. Said they just needed someone to make sure the pipes didn't freeze and that their cat Buckley got fed. I said sure. I didn't ask for money or anything. I liked Nate, and honestly, I was between jobs and bored out of my mind. The place was nice, in a basic wooden cabin kind of way. 2 bedrooms, dark brown siding, wide porch out front, big deck out back. The driveway was gravel and twisted up the hill for what felt like forever. No neighbors within shouting distance, no streetlights. Once you pulled off the highway, It was just you and trees. Nate gave me the garage code, showed me where they kept the spare key, left a 6-pack of Shiner in the fridge, and told me to help myself to anything in the pantry. No internet, barely any cell signal unless you stood on the deck and tilted your phone just right. He made a joke about the dead zone vibes and told me not to let the place burn down. That was it. I figured I'd use the time to unplug. I brought a few books, my old acoustic guitar and a stack of DVDs, some Tarantino, some horror, even a couple of those old sitcom box sets. It felt like a mini vacation. I didn't tell anyone where I was, which seemed kind of freeing at the time. The first few days were exactly what I needed. Slept late, made coffee, sat out on the porch with a book, listened to the constant buzz of bugs and birds in the trees. At night, I'd throw on a movie, maybe have a beer or two, crash on the couch. There was something nice about not checking my phone every 5 minutes. I felt like I could actually hear myself think for once. That all changed on the 4th night. It was close to midnight, and I went out for a smoke. It had become a little ritual by then. Light one up, lean on the porch railing, listen to the forest. I wasn't scared of the woods or anything. I grew up hunting and camping. The darkness never bothered me. But that night, something was different. I stepped out and noticed it right away. The silence. No bugs, no owls, no wind rustling through the trees. Just dead, absolute quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get when things wind down. This felt unnatural, like everything had stopped at once. It was so quiet, my ears almost rang. That's when I saw something. Just a flicker of movement between the trees, maybe 30 feet out, low to the ground, crawling. Not like a lizard or raccoon, but smoother, slower. I couldn't see its shape clearly, just a dark figure slipping between 2 tree trunks. I waited for it to bolt. Animals usually run when they know they've been spotted. It didn't. It stopped, then it started backing up, still facing the house, just slowly retreating, like it didn't care if I saw it. I backed into the house without even finishing the smoke, locked the door, and turned the deadbolt. I stood there in the foyer, suddenly aware that Nate's house didn't have curtains. Not on the big front windows anyway. I stayed up for a while after that. Didn't really want to go to sleep. The next morning, I made coffee like usual, but kept checking the woods. After lunch, I walked to the edge of the trees with a kitchen knife shoved in my waistband, which in hindsight was pretty dumb. I didn't have a plan. I found a spot where the grass and underbrush had been flattened. Not a trail exactly, more like something had moved through and left a line. I followed it for maybe 10 feet. That's when I saw it. An imprint in the dirt. It looked like a footprint, but it was wrong. No shoe tread, just bare skin. Toes way too long, spaced out like fingers. It was about the size of a kid's foot, but stretched, like someone had taken a normal foot and pulled it at both ends. I stared at it for a long time before heading back to the house. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't even call Nate. What would I say? Hey man, your woods have freaky toe prints and shadow crawlers? That night, I left every light on. I locked every window. Didn't even bother pretending to relax. Around 2 a.m., I was dozing off on the couch when I heard it crunching gravel. Slow, measured, like someone walking carefully up the driveway. I muted the TV. Then came the porch steps. 1, pause. 2, pause. 3. I sat up and grabbed the tire iron from beside the fireplace, slid down onto the floor and crawled toward the side window, peered out through the curtain. No one. Then I heard the screen door latch. That little metallic clink when the handle lifts. It didn't open. Just the latch going up, then down. I held my breath, didn't move for what felt like forever. Eventually, I crawled to the front door and looked through the peephole. Nobody, but right there on the mat was a rock. Perfectly smooth, perfectly round. Looked like it had been plucked straight from a river. I opened the door an inch, snatched it up, and slammed the door shut. There was something carved into the bottom. A circle with 4 uneven lines sticking out like little sun rays. It wasn't neat, It looked like it had been scratched in with a nail or maybe a knife. Next morning, I left the rock on the railing and tried to act like none of it had happened. That night, everything got worse. I was brushing my teeth when the lights flickered and went out. No warning, just dead power. I waited a minute. Nothing. Checked the fuse box, everything looked fine, no storm, no reason for it to be out. I lit a few candles I found in one of the kitchen drawers and sat back down in the living room, tire iron nearby. That's when I heard the tapping. Soft, steady, tap, 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 coming from the back door, the one with the glass panel. I killed the flashlight and moved to the kitchen. Got low, crawled under the window and slowly peeked over the edge of the counter. Out at the edge of the woods stood something, short, maybe 4 feet tall, head too big, arms hanging low, legs stick thin. It didn't move, but the tapping kept going. I didn't look long, just long enough to be sure I wasn't imagining it. Then I ducked back down and stayed there. Eventually the tapping stopped. A minute passed. Then I heard footsteps again, soft ones, coming across the porch. And then, nothing. I stayed on that floor until sunrise. When the power came back, I checked everything. Doors, windows, back door glass, no signs of entry, no marks, no prints. I packed up most of my stuff and told myself I'd leave the next morning. No matter what. I tried to sleep that night, stayed on the couch, dressed, tire iron in hand. I dozed off for maybe an hour. Then I woke up, breathing, not mine. It was heavy. Slow, wet almost, coming from right behind me, from the air vent. I didn't turn around, just sat there, still as I could, listening. It kept going, 30 seconds, maybe longer, then silence. I waited until dawn, then grabbed my bags, walked to the car, and drove down the gravel without a single glance back. I didn't stop until I saw other cars, buildings, people. Whatever was in those woods never showed its face, but it knew I was alone, and it wanted me to know it was there. My name's Mark. I was 23 when I said yes to house sitting for my uncle for 2 weeks. He'd flown off to Florida and left me with his place way up in the hills near some tiny, almost forgotten town in western North Carolina. The house sat against a slope off a cracked fire road, completely swallowed by trees. He had 2 large mutts, Hunter and Jinx. Real sweet, but not the sharpest. He said my only jobs were to feed them and make sure the pipes didn't freeze. I'd just quit this wirehouse gig I couldn't stand, so a 2-week break seemed like a good way to clear my head. No cell signal, no neighbors, just silence. When I say cabin, I don't mean the stereotypical cozy retreat. This place had running water, satellite TV, and a barely functioning Wi-Fi connection that loaded email at a snail's pace. But it also had walls that groaned like someone shifting upstairs and hallways that never quite lit up, even with every light switched on. My uncle built it himself, supposedly with a friend who, according to hushed family talk, disappeared not long after. Nobody ever said it straight, but everyone seemed to feel like he'd wandered into those trees and never come back. The first 2 nights were easy. I cooked dinners, watched whatever junk TV would load, and took Hunter and Jinx on short walks down the gravel driveway. I never stepped beyond that gravel stretch. The forest felt unnerving. Trees so dense they blocked out the sky, no trails or clearings, just towering trunks. The deeper you looked, the darker it got. No sunlight, no sounds, just a heavy quiet. Then came night 3. Around 3 o'clock IE, both dogs shot up at the same time, muscles stiff. They padded over to the sliding glass door in the living room and started growling. Low, tense, not the kind dogs use to scare off a raccoon. Not a bark, a deep, guttural growl that sounded like their bodies couldn't decide whether to fight or run. I rolled out of bed and crept over. The window framed pure darkness. I flicked on the porch floodlights. They blinked on for a split second, then shut off. I mashed the switch again. Dead. Hunter and Jinx stayed frozen, staring into the black. I stood with them for what felt like forever. Then their growls trailed off. They backed away. Both had tail tips between their legs. Morning light didn't help. I took a slow walk along the edge of the woods. No footprints, no broken twigs, no disturbance of any kind. I inspected the floodlight bulbs. They were fine. The switch worked again. I shrugged it off as a glitch. That night, I double-locked every door and window and set an old metal bat I found near the fireplace against the bed. I said to myself, just get through these 2 weeks. Fell asleep somewhere after midnight. Then, at exactly 2:44 a.m., I woke to a smell of cold air through the cracked open window. A slow scratching, deliberate and soft, echoed overhead, like fingernails dragged across old floorboards. I froze. I wasn't even sure the house had an attic, but Hunter and Jinx were both upright, staring at the ceiling, ears pinned forward, rigid. At dawn, I discovered the attic hatch in the hallway ceiling, pulled it down. There was a tight ladder and just enough space to crawl in. I hoisted myself up with a flashlight clenched between my teeth. Inside, dusty boxes, loose insulation, a faded plastic sled. Nothing disturbed. No footprints, no dropped screws, nothing to suggest someone had been up there. Still, every night after that, I left the ladder dropped a couple steps. Easier to check again if I needed. For 3 quiet days, things calmed. I let my guard down, dogs mellowed, I almost felt like I was on a real vacation. Then night 5 rolled around. I stepped out after dinner to get fresh air and nearly tripped over a little stack of 3 stones sitting neatly by the door. I hadn't noticed them before. I blinked and checked. The house cameras showed nothing, not even a deer passing. Motion sensors recorded 0 movement. I shrugged, kicked the stones over the edge of the deck, and listened. Nothing. No wind, no distant insect hum, just stillness. Like someone pressed pause on everything. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3:11 a.m., the floodlight on the back porch flashed, barely visible, but it clicked. I paced over to the door, glass pressed to my face. For a split second, I saw something slink across the yard. Crawling on all 4s, elbows bent the wrong way, fast and low. Not an animal I recognized. Didn't turn toward the house, just slithered away. I didn't curl up in bed. I knew I wouldn't sleep anyway. Hunter and Jinx sat right beside me all through the night. Morning came slow. I called my uncle. Voice on the other end was quiet when he answered. Ever had weird stuff out there? I asked, trying not to sound insane. He paused. Then, don't go into the woods behind the house. That's old land. You leave it alone, it leaves you alone. What's it? I pressed. He didn't explain, just hung up. I almost packed up that morning, honest. But something, can't explain it, made me stay. Stubbornness, curiosity, or the dumb thought it'd go away. Not sure. That night, I staged myself in the living room with the dogs, unplugged the TV so the glass door didn't glare, kept the bat across my knees, sat and listened. At 4:03 a.m., I heard footsteps, not on the porch, under it. The boards creaked in slow, matched pairs, exactly like crawling footsteps. I froze, grabbed the flashlight, shone it through the slats, and pressed my ear to the boards. Everything went quiet. Then I heard it, a whisper from below me, soft but clear. You left it. I stumbled back, checked every door, every window, locked tight. Nothing open, nothing out of place. But I couldn't shake the whisper in my head. Afterward, morning found another rock stack by the door, 4 stones this time. One was slick, wet. I leaned in to sniff. Smelled like iron. That night became the worst. At 3:48 a.m., Hunter launched at the glass so hard the smart lock rattled. Jinx barked nonstop, body spinning, tail tucked, like she was chasing her own fear. I sprinted to the window. There were 5 of them in the yard, all pale, emaciated, barefoot. Their clothes were tattered or missing. They stood stock still, all looking away at once, facing the trees. The air seemed to hold them in place. One lifted an arm and pointed, slowly, deliberately, into the woods. The others turned, followed, slipped into the trees without a sound. I kept watching until morning. Didn't blink, didn't move. Daylight finally came. I opened the front door to leash the dogs. They wouldn't budge. Jinx peed in the doorway. Hunter just stared ahead. On the porch beam, hanging, was a deer. Its chest was torn open, ribs splayed like open hands. All organs gone. Legs crossed neatly like it had been placed there. Eyes and tongue removed. Flies already gnawed in. I didn't pack, didn't clean. I shoved the dogs in the truck, slammed the door, locked it, and left. Uncle never mentioned it again. When I finally forced the words out about the deer, he just said, "They know you're not from here." I haven't gone back. I'm 29. I've been living by myself in this rented double-wide trailer just outside Millersville, tucked right up against the edge of the woods, western North Carolina. Not the part people visit. It's mostly old forest, hunting land, and driveways you miss if you blink. You lose cell signal 10 minutes before my road even starts. That's not an exaggeration. I've timed it. I work remote doing tech support, which means I don't really have to go anywhere. Most weeks I barely leave the property. Grocery runs on Sundays, maybe the gas station if I'm low during the week, but otherwise it's just me and the trees. I used to really like that about it. Quiet, simple, predictable, until last November. It started the week after Halloween. The leaves were pretty much gone by then, and mornings were cold enough that I could see my breath just standing in the kitchen. I had the heat cranked up and all the windows sealed tight. Except one. That kitchen window's been a problem since the summer. The track warped, or something bent, and it just wouldn't close all the way. Got stuck about 3 inches from the bottom. I rigged it up with a broom handle, jammed it under the sash and made sure nothing could get in. Screen was still intact. Didn't seem like a big deal at the time. That changed one night. It was a little after 2 a.m. I remember because I glanced at the oven clock. I'd woken up with that dry mouth feeling and decided to get a drink of water. Didn't bother with the lights. I know that house like muscle memory. I can walk the whole place in the dark without bumping into anything. I went to the sink, filled a glass, and just as I took the first sip, I heard something. It was this soft, drawn-out creaking noise, low and steady. It wasn't metal. It wasn't like a cabinet hinge. It sounded like wood shifting against wood. I froze. It was coming from the kitchen window. I set the glass down quietly and leaned in a bit, trying to hear better. It happened again, same slow, deliberate creak, like someone pressing gently against the bottom edge of the frame, then letting go, then pressing again. At first I thought maybe it was wind catching the frame or the broom slipping. So I flipped the light on. Nothing. The window looked the same, broom still wedged in, screen still there. I stood there listening for maybe 30 seconds, not a sound. I figured maybe I was just hearing the house settle, or maybe I'd imagined it. I went back to bed. Next morning, I went around outside to check things out. Ground under the window is hard clay. No prints, nothing out of place. But maybe 5 feet to the left, under the edge of the roof overhang, the grass was different. Like something had been standing there. Not stepped through, not stomped down, just gently pressed flat. I stared at it for a while. Then I went inside, cut a piece of pressure-treated wood, and wedged it into the window frame. After that, I nailed it shut with 2 deck screws. I figured, done and done. That night, I stayed up later than usual. Had a crime documentary playing on the TV, wasn't really paying attention, just background noise while I browsed on my laptop. Around 3:30 a.m., everything electronic just blinked out at the same time. The TV froze, the router lights went out, my laptop lost connection. My phone blinked once and dropped to no service. But the lights were still on. Lamps, ceiling fan, even the fridge was still humming like normal. That's what made it weird. Power was still flowing, but every digital thing just stopped. Then the motion sensor on the back porch clicked on. The lights mounted above the mudroom door, angled toward the woods. It doesn't trip easy. You have to move through a very specific slice of yard to set it off. I saw the light spill in through the hallway, bright and sharp. I got up slowly, keeping low, and moved to the hallway window. I peeked through the side of the blind. Nothing. Yard was empty, no movement, but the light stayed on a solid 30 seconds before it finally shut off. I waited another 5 minutes before going into the kitchen and pulling the blind all the way down. Then I just sat in the recliner until sunrise. Didn't even try to sleep. Next day, the internet was working again. No explanation. I called the provider and they told me everything looked fine on their end. No outages, no maintenance. I didn't say anything about what happened. Just thanked them and hung up. That night, I was drying a plate after dinner when I heard it. 3 knocks, sharp, fast. Not like someone hesitating, like someone tapping hard to get my attention. And they were coming from the kitchen window. I dropped the plate. It shattered, and I didn't even move. I just stood there staring at that window, the same one I'd sealed shut and nailed closed. 10 feet off the ground, no platform, no ladder, just vinyl siding and a drop-off into the woods. I turned off the lights, crouched behind the counter, and didn't move. No follow-up knock, no noise, just silence. I waited there for probably 10 minutes. Then I crawled to the hallway and peeked around the corner. The screen was gone, not ripped or hanging loose, just gone, lifted clean out of the frame. And on the outer glass pane, I saw this smear. Greasy, black, almost like axle grease. Right along the edge. I didn't pack. I didn't lock up. I grabbed my keys and flashlight and drove straight to the Shell station near the main road. Sat there under the lights until the sun came up. That morning I called Rick. He's an old buddy, grew up around here. Used to hunt the woods behind my place back in the day. I told him what happened. All of it. Didn't hold back. He showed up that afternoon with his .388 and a bag full of trail cams. No questions asked. We set up 4-1 on each side of the trailer. Motion activated, night vision, all battery powered. He offered to stay the night. I didn't argue. That night we stayed up with coffee and a loaded shotgun between us. Had some trash TV going, but we weren't really watching, just waiting. Around 4:10 a.m., one of the cameras pinged. It was the one facing the back of the house. The kitchen window. We pulled up the feed and for a few seconds, there was nothing. Then something came into frame. Moving slow across the yard, not walking, sliding. It was low to the ground, almost crawling, but smooth, like it wasn't putting weight down, just gliding. We couldn't see a face, couldn't even tell if it had one. Just this long, pale shape. Elbows or knees pushing through the grass, but the rest of it stayed weirdly fluid. It stopped at the wall, right below the window. Next frame, it was standing. I felt my stomach twist. It was shaped like a person, but the details were wrong. It was too tall, too thin, and the arms hung in a way that didn't look right. The head was tilted, like the neck couldn't quite hold it upright. One arm raised and pressed something, maybe a hand, against the window. The feed glitched. When it came back, the thing was gone. Just the grass swaying where it had been. Rick didn't speak, just stood up, grabbed the shotgun, and sat at the front door until daylight. We checked the camera. Nothing tampered with, batteries were full. Rick took the camera and the memory card with him when he left. He's never brought them back up. I never asked. 2 days later, I walked into the kitchen and saw the screen had been reattached. Not properly. It was bent, shoved into the frame like someone didn't understand how it was supposed to fit, and on the glass, 4 long smudges. Prints, maybe, like fingers, but stretched, spaced too far apart. That was it for me. I gave notice the same week. Broke the lease. Left the furniture, most of my stuff. I moved into a little apartment closer to town. Haven't been back since. My name's Caleb, and up until I turned 18, I honestly thought nothing could rattle me. Growing up in the woods your whole life gives you a kind of false confidence, like you've already seen the scariest stuff out there. Coyotes, copperheads, the occasional meth head in the distance. Sure, creepy, but manageable. You learn what to do. You learn not to panic. We lived way out in southern West Virginia. My dad bought this timber frame house on a ridge when I was 10, and we rebuilt it as a family. It sat on 10 acres of thick woods, and we had no real neighbors. Closest house was 3, maybe 4 miles down a dirt road. My dad was a carpenter, big on self-reliance and even bigger on distrust. He didn't trust banks, he didn't trust politicians, and he really didn't trust cell towers. My mom was gentler but just as self-sufficient. She homeschooled me until I started at the community college in Clay County. We ran the house on solar panels and a diesel generator. Had a well, chickens, 2 hounds named Duke and Cricket, and a whole pantry of dried beans and vacuum-sealed meat. My dad called it preparedness, not paranoia. I liked it, honestly. It was all I'd ever known. Quiet, simple, routine. No drama, no sirens, just woods, tools, and dogs. So when my parents told me they were going on a 5-day trip to Wilmington for their anniversary, I didn't hesitate. They were leaving on a Tuesday, back by Sunday. I said I'd stay behind, take care of the animals, keep an eye on the house. I had a big paper due for my comp class anyway. 5 days of peace sounded like a gift. The first 2 nights were boring in the best way. I fed the dogs, kept the coop clean, took walks around the ridge with Duke trailing behind and Cricket darting into the brush after squirrels. I worked on the paper in the evenings, made myself simple dinners, locked up before bed, and slept fine. The house creaked a little at night, but it always did that. Wood settles, nothing unusual. Then came night 3. I woke up at exactly 1:47 a.m. because I heard footsteps on the porch. Not scrambling, not some raccoon nosing through garbage. I know that sound. This was deliberate, pacing. Slow, heavy boots on old wood. You could hear the weight shift with each step. They started at one end of the porch, paused, then turned and came back and forth, over and over. I sat up in bed, holding my breath. The porch motion lights never clicked on, which meant whoever was out there knew how to avoid them. My dad once showed me how. Move low and slow, and you could stay outside the sensor's field. There was this tiny creak, just one like someone lightly leaned on the front door. I didn't move much. I just reached over to the dresser, grabbed the rifle, and stared down the hallway that led to the living room. I waited. After about a minute, the steps stopped. Then silence. Not a car, not a branch, just nothing. By morning, it felt surreal, like maybe I dreamed it. But when I opened the front door, Duke pushed past me and started growling low, nose pressed to the floorboards. His tail was stiff, straight down. I didn't see any footprints, just leaves and pine needles like always. But the way he sniffed, it was like the scent was burned in. I didn't tell anyone. It felt like there was nothing to say. I mean, I live in the woods. Weird stuff happens. But that night, I doubled down, locked every door, jammed a cast iron skillet behind the front door as a makeshift alarm, plugged in the flashlight, and charged my phone. I kept the rifle on the bed with me this time, not beside it. Then, at 2:12 a.m., I woke up again. But this time, it wasn't footsteps. It was humming off-key, tuneless, like someone was trying to sing but didn't know how. It came from the kitchen window, the one over the sink. I could hear it through the glass. Not loud, but steady. Wrong. I got out of bed barefoot and crept through the hallway. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't want them to know I was awake. The humming stopped the second I got close to the sink. I waited in the dark for a few seconds, then reached for the curtain and pulled it back an inch. There was a figure standing at the tree line. Tall, still, just watching. I leaned in, trying to make out details, but they didn't move toward me. Instead, they turned and walked sideways. Smooth, slow steps slipping into the trees like they were floating. And as they moved, the humming started again. Fainter this time, until it vanished completely. I didn't go back to sleep. I sat on the couch with the rifle across my lap and my phone in my hand, refreshing the battery percentage, even though it didn't change. I didn't call anyone. I just waited for morning. At dawn, I took Duke and Cricket out to the woods near the kitchen. We found prints, bare feet, not just barefoot, spread wide, almost flat, with deep heel impressions and long toes spaced unnaturally far apart. They circled the house, passed behind the coop, then vanished behind the shed. I didn't report it. Didn't see the point. No one would come up here just because I heard humming and saw weird footprints. So I spent the day prepping. Cleaned the rifle again, charged every battery I could find, left every single outdoor light on. Even considered sleeping in my truck. At 1:30 a.m. that night, everything died. Every light in the house went out at once. No warning, no flicker, just gone. But the generator kept humming, I could hear it. Still, no lights, no power, even the electric fence around the co-op. Dead. Phone charger didn't work, Wi-Fi gone. Like someone had flipped a switch somewhere. Then the knocking started. Not banging, knocking. Slow, rhythmic. 3 knocks, a pause, then 3 more. It started on the east wall, then the west side, then behind the kitchen. Always in 3s. Always moving. I crouched in the hallway with the rifle. Finger on the trigger. Flashlight in my lap. Waiting. The dogs didn't bark. They crawled under the bed, trembling. I didn't even know they could fit under there. Light, then nothing, just stillness. It stayed that way until morning. When the sun came up, I went straight behind the shed with the dogs. That's where I found it, a spiral made of bones, deer bones, clean and pale, arranged in a tight spiral on the dirt, maybe 3 feet across. It looked deliberate, like someone spent real time setting it up. We hadn't hunted in months. We didn't have those bones on our property. Someone brought them. That night, I didn't bother pretending to sleep. I sat in the living room, curtains drawn, back to the wall, rifle on my lap. At 1:09, I heard the front doorknob turn. It moved slowly like someone testing it, then stopped. And then came the voice. Don't mind me, it wasn't loud, just casual, calm, like someone asking for a glass of water. Not a threat, just a statement. I didn't respond. Then I caught movement at the side window. A face, pressed against the glass. No hair. White skin. Eyes too wide. Lips cracked and curled into a grin. I shouted and raised the rifle. The face dropped out of sight immediately. I didn't chase it. I didn't move. I just stood there, chest heaving, waiting for something else. But nothing came. The next morning, the coop doors were all wide open, every one of them. The chickens were alive, but they were different. Each had a triangular cut in the same exact spot on their feathers. Not deep, just intentional, like someone was collecting samples. When my parents got back, I told them everything. My dad didn't question me. He checked the wiring, didn't find anything wrong. That night, he sat up with the shotgun. Nothing happened. 2 nights later, I was just starting to fall asleep when the humming came back, right outside my bedroom window. My dad grabbed the shotgun and went out. He was gone for nearly an hour. When he came back, he looked like he'd seen something he couldn't explain. He didn't speak. Didn't even take his boots off, just sat at the kitchen table until the sun came up. 3 months later, we moved. The house sat empty for over a year before someone else bought it. A couple of years back, I moved into this old cabin that used to belong to my Uncle Marty. He passed away the year before, and nobody else in the family wanted the place. It's about 2.5 miles outside Finch Hollow, which is the kind of Appalachian town that doesn't show up on GPS unless you zoom in so far you can see trees individually. There's one main road, a gas station that sells bait, and a diner where I think the waitresses also double as town council. The mayor processes deer in his garage. I'm not kidding. I figured the cabin would be a good place to reset for a while, get some space. It was tucked up on a wooded slope with no other houses in sight. Looked peaceful. From the porch, all you could see was trees. Just a solid wall of pine and brush that started maybe 15 feet from the front steps. It almost felt like the woods were leaning in toward the place, like they were trying to get a better look. The first week was all maintenance. Roof was leaking in 3 places, the plumbing groaned every time I turned on a faucet, and the electricity had a personality. If I made coffee and microwaved something at the same time, all the lights blinked out for 10 seconds like the place was rebooting. No cell service, unless I stood on the roof with one leg up like a flamingo, and the internet was basically useless. I'd click to load a web page and go chop kindling while it buffered. But I didn't mind at first. The quiet was different. Not exactly peaceful, but it felt like a break. Then it started getting weird. The first thing was footsteps. Thursday night, I was up late reading, just trying to wind down, when I heard gravel crunching. It was the sound of someone walking slowly up the path toward the porch. I put the book down and froze. Thought maybe it was a deer or something, but the steps were steady, not that skittish shuffling animals do. This was one step, then another, like someone walking with purpose. Then they stopped. Right in front of the steps. I waited, holding my breath. Nothing. I opened the front door, barefoot, flashlight in hand, and stepped out. The beam swept across the trees. Nothing moved, not even a breeze. But the feeling, it was like standing on a stage with someone watching from the dark. Like I was being studied. Next night, around 2:15 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't place right away. Tap, 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 3 quick knocks, then silence. I sat up in the loft bed, holding my breath, listening. Then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. Same rhythm, but now it was on a different window, the one by the living room. Then again, farther back on the kitchen window. It moved like whatever was tapping was circling the house. Always the same 3 taps. I finally got fed up and shouted, "Hey, who's out there?" No response. No more tapping. Nothing. I opened the front door again, heart racing, expecting to see something or someone standing there. But there was just empty woods. I told myself it was probably some local kid screwing with a new guy trying to get a scare out of me, except Finch Hollow didn't exactly have a booming youth population. Everyone I'd seen so far had gray hair and a 1,000-yard stare. No bikes in the yards, no chalk drawings on the sidewalks, just older folks who watched me like I was a misplaced object. A couple days later, I was out back chopping firewood. I took a break, wiped my face, and glanced up at the tree line. There was someone there, about 20, maybe 30 yards in, half behind a tree, just standing, watching. They didn't move. Didn't say anything. I called out, "Can I help you?" No response. Then, as smooth as a shadow, they turned and slipped behind the tree. Gone in an instant. I didn't chase them. I didn't even move. The next morning, I drove into town and talked to the sheriff. Guy named Barnes. Looked like he'd been born wearing a utility belt and hadn't smiled since 1983. I told him everything. About the tapping, the figure in the woods, the feeling like something was watching me. He didn't laugh, just nodded like he'd heard it before. "Might be a squatter," he said. "Meth heads sometimes camp off grid around here, or someone's just not right in the head. You keeping your doors locked?" "Every day. Keep it that way." That night, I double-checked every lock, even jammed a broom handle into the sliding window track. I wanted to feel secure. I didn't. Around midnight, there was a crash. Not a creak, not something falling over. Something slammed into the outside wall hard enough to knock a framed photo off the wall and send it clattering across the floor. One of my coffee mugs shook off the kitchen shelf and shattered. I grabbed the rifle from the bedroom and bolted out the front door, ready for anything, and there it was. A rabbit, nailed to the siding, right at chest height. Its body sagged from the nail, blood still fresh. Nailed straight through, eyes gouged out, legs limp. I stood there, the flashlight beam trembling, staring at it like it might move. Eventually, I pulled it down and buried it behind the cabin. Didn't sleep that night either, just sat with a rifle across my lap, listening for any sound that didn't belong. Next morning, I rigged up motion sensor lights all over the property, wired them to chime inside if anything moved. I carved a few notches into the porch posts so I could prop my rifle up without fumbling. Every little thing helped, but not enough. 3 days later, I found the padlock to the shed lying on the ground. twisted like someone had forced it. One of my axes was missing. That night I pulled into the driveway and my headlights caught something in the garden. A scarecrow, except I hadn't made one. Hadn't even thought about it. It was dressed in an old flannel shirt and jeans stuffed with straw. The head was a burlap sack with burnt-out eye holes, just standing there, like it had always been there. I doused it in lighter fluid and lit the match without thinking twice. Watched it burn to a soggy pile of ash and blackened buttons. Thought about leaving, really did. But something stubborn kept me there. Maybe pride, maybe curiosity. That ended fast. Around 3:30 in the morning, I woke up to creaking floorboards inside the cabin. I held perfectly still. The steps were slow, deliberate, moving around downstairs. I grabbed the lantern, lit it, then got the rifle. Peered over the loft edge. Nobody there, but I could feel it. Like the air was heavier, like something had been waiting for me to wake up. I whispered, "Who's down there?" No reply. When I finally went down, the front door was wide open. Next morning, there were barefoot tracks in the mud. Not animal, not human, something in between. 5 toes, but longer, weirder proportions. I drove into town with the pictures, but Barnes wasn't in. His deputy looked pale when I asked. "He's missing," she said. "Last seen driving out toward your road." That night, I drove back just before dark. As I turned onto the gravel path, I saw smoke rising from the chimney. I hadn't lit anything. I killed the engine and stepped out, leaving the door open. Moved around to the back, rifle ready, heart hammering. Through the kitchen window, I saw someone in the living room, wearing Uncle Marty's coat. The old, worn one I'd sealed in a cedar chest. I didn't go inside. I backed away, got in the truck, and drove straight to a motel, 30 miles. Didn't stop. 2 days later, I came back with 2 state troopers. The cabin was empty, cold. No signs of entry, no fire, no coat. But sitting on the kitchen table was a rabbit's foot, perfectly clean, tied with twine. I didn't pack. I didn't even step all the way inside. I locked the door, slid the key under a rock, and left. Haven't been back since. I was 22 when my parents asked if I could stay home and watch the house for a weekend. They were heading out to my Aunt Linda's place in Jasper County. Something about her falling and messing up her hip, and one of her goats going feral at the worst possible time. It sounded like a circus waiting to happen. Normally, I might have gone, but I knew what that meant. 2 nights sleeping on a sunken couch, surrounded by screaming little cousins who think volume equals comedy. I told them I had classwork and would rather stay behind, take care of the chickens, keep an eye on things. We lived way out in Benton Hollow. Not even sure it showed up on most GPS maps. After the last gas station, you had to follow this winding stretch of road for another 10 minutes and then make a left between 2 trees that looked exactly like the other 1,000. If you didn't already know where it was, you'd drive right past the driveway, guaranteed. The house was wedged into the ridge, surrounded by woods that just swallowed sound. Pine, oak, poplar. It was thick. You couldn't see 10 feet in any direction without bumping into a tree. My folks always said that made it safer, nobody wandering up accidentally, and I always believed them. I mean, we never had trouble before, until that weekend. They left Friday morning, around 7. I made myself some eggs, knocked out a couple chores, and then mostly did nothing. Made noodles for dinner, watched a few dumb videos on my phone, spent a while on the porch just reading and listening to the chickens peck around. You get used to the sounds out there, bugs buzzing, trees settling, raccoons having a party in the brush. It all blends together after a while. I didn't hear anything unusual. When it got dark, I turned off the porch light. No reason to leave it on, I figured. Nobody was coming up that driveway. I went around and locked both the front and back doors. Also made sure the windows upstairs were shut and latched. All except for the bathroom window. That one always stuck halfway. Rusted or warped or something. You had to push it hard from the inside, Practically use your whole body. I got lazy, figured no one was going to scale a 2-story wall of mossy siding just to climb into a bathroom. I brushed my teeth, tossed my phone on the charger, and got in bed around 10:30. I left my door cracked a couple inches, habit from growing up in a creaky old house. I fell asleep fast. Then I woke up just like that, no noise or dream. My eyes opened and I looked at my phone. 2:11 a.m. EM. That number stuck in my head for some reason. It was the first thing I saw. That and the spinning blue circle at the top of the screen. No signal. Then came the sound. A click. It was quiet, but sharp. Not loud like a bang or a thud. It was a latch. That soft, mechanical sound of someone turning a doorknob real slow and easing it shut behind them. I froze. Not from confusion, not from grogginess. My body just locked. The house is old. You sneeze and something groans. Doors creak, steps whine. I know all those sounds. This wasn't one of them. This was too smooth, too controlled. I sat up slow and swung my legs over the side of the bed. My phone had no bars, not even the fake ones that pretend they'll work if you walk 2 inches to the left. I reached under my bed and pulled out the aluminum bat my Uncle Lee gave me as a housewarming gift when I first moved out. He thought it was hilarious. "Something for the possums," he said. I mostly used it to swat spiders. That night, it was the only thing in the house that even resembled a weapon. I walked quietly to the bedroom door and pressed my ear against it. Nothing. No footsteps. No whispering. I eased the door open and peeked into the hallway. Dark, completely. I crept to the top of the stairs. Still nothing. That's when I heard it. A kitchen drawer sliding open. It wasn't fast. It wasn't rough. Just a slow, casual glide. Then it shut. Another one. Open, shut. Whoever it was wasn't grabbing things and running. They were going through them like they had all the time in the world. Like they were looking for something specific. Or checking. That's what really got me. The quiet, the patience. I backed away, trying not to make a sound, and ducked into the bathroom. Locked the door behind me and lifted my phone up by the mirror. Sometimes I could catch one bar if I held it at the right angle. Nothing. I typed out a text to my cousin Kyle. "Call Sheriff House, not safe." I hit send a dozen times. Nothing sent. Just that stupid spinning dot. Downstairs went quiet. I didn't hear footsteps, but I could feel something. Like the house itself had shifted. The kind of stillness that tells you someone just made a decision. I climbed into the tub and started working on the window. It squealed loud halfway up and jammed. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard it was messing with my hearing. I pushed again, slower. Got it open just enough to maybe fit through. Then I heard the first stair creak. One step, then another. I counted them, like my life depended on it. 3, 4, 5, 6. Then it stopped. The bathroom's right at the top of the stairs. I looked down at the crack under the door, and there it was. A shadow. Barely moving. Just this dark shape hovering in front of the door. They weren't walking right. They'd take a step, then stop, then sniff. Not full sniffs either, just short, fast ones, like something trying to smell me. Sniff, 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 then a voice. You turned off the porch light. It was right on the other side of the door. It wasn't angry, it wasn't loud, just flat, like someone repeating something they saw. Then came the knocks, 3 of them, perfectly spaced. Same weight each time. Not loud, just there. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The shadow stayed, didn't shift much, didn't talk again. Eventually it backed up, slowly. I watched the darkness pull away, then silence. I waited. 5 full minutes. I counted each one out loud, whispering the numbers like they were spells. Then I yanked myself up and out the window. I scraped my arms and hands going down and landed hard in the bushes. Didn't matter. I was running before I hit the ground. No shoes, no flashlight, just pure panic. I didn't head for the road. I cut through the trees. Branches slapped me. Something tore my shirt, but I didn't stop. About half a mile in, I tripped on a root and smashed my knee into a rock. I screamed, I think. My whole leg went numb, but I got up and kept moving, limping now, crashing through underbrush until I saw a porch light glowing through the trees. A trailer, old, faded flag out front. I ran to the door and pounded with both hands. A guy opened up in boxers, squinting like I was the nightmare. I told him someone was in my house. He didn't say much, just handed me a phone and called the sheriff himself. They didn't find anyone, no prints, no signs of forced entry. Every drawer was open, everyone. But the weirdest part? The only thing missing was the knob from one drawer, unscrewed, taken. The back door was still locked, the bathroom window too high to climb from outside. No answers, and I haven't stayed in that house alone again. My name's Dylan, and I was 16 the summer my parents left me alone at that cabin in the middle of nowhere. They just inherited it from my dad's uncle. Uncle Brent, I think. I didn't even know the guy existed until suddenly, boom, we own a piece of land with a cabin way out in the southern part of West Virginia. You know those roads where the pavement just gives up halfway through and turns into gravel? That's what we had to drive for miles to get there. And then even after the gravel ended, we had to follow this twisty little path through a wall of trees. No signs, no markers. If you missed the turnoff, too bad. You weren't finding it again without a guide. The cabin itself? It looked like something out of a forgotten era. Small, boxy, and definitely not cute. It had this dull brown siding that looked like it had been sun-blasted for a decade straight, a roof that dipped in one corner, and a screen door that wheezed like it was dying every time it moved. The porch was just a few mismatched planks nailed together, some of them warped and soft. It didn't scream cozy mountain getaway. It kind of whispered mold hazard. But my parents had this big plan. My mom was all in on the idea of turning it into an eco-retreat. My dad, ever the realist with a touch of wishful thinking, called it an investment property. They wanted to fix it up, list it on some rental site, and market it to people who liked hiking or disconnecting from civilization. You know, the ones who write blog posts about how life-changing it was to cook lentils on a camp stove for 3 days. I didn't see the vision. To me, it just looked like a weird old shack with plumbing that sounded like it was choking every time I flushed. So when they told me I'd be spending nearly a week there alone to start the cleanup process, I thought they were joking. They weren't. The deal was 6 days by myself to clear out the junk, sweep and mop, burn the broken furniture in the old fire pit, and maybe scrape the inside of the fridge if I had time. In exchange, I'd get paid and could lord it over my friends that I'd survived a week off-grid without Wi-Fi. Before they left, my mom stuffed the fridge with enough leftovers to keep me alive, and my dad handed me a long, old-looking key. "Keep the doors locked," he said, not even trying to sound dramatic. "People around here don't knock." Then they backed out of the narrow driveway and disappeared into the trees. The first couple of days were actually fine. Kind of boring, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. I moved a bunch of dusty, cobweb-covered furniture out to the back porch. Some of it was weird, like this wooden rocking horse with a chunk missing from its eye, but mostly it was just chairs and old tables. I even tried starting a fire in the pit behind the cabin, but the wood was damp and I gave up halfway through. At night, I'd crash on this lumpy twin mattress in the back room and listen to the woods. Branches rustling, the occasional owl, maybe a coyote in the distance. It was quiet, eerily so, but I figured that was just how things worked out there. No neighbors, no traffic, no anything. But then the third night hit. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth and I heard this soft knock against the back door. Not a bang or a thud, just one single knock, like someone had nudged the door with their hip by accident. I froze mid-brush and stared at the sink for a second, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Maybe something fell outside? A branch? Then came the second knock, slower, heavier, like someone had paused, then decided to try again. I turned off the faucet, wiped my mouth, and crept toward the kitchen. The back door had a small window, nothing big, just enough to peek out. I stood there for at least 2 full minutes just watching. No shadows, no movement. Lock was still bolted. I flipped off the kitchen light and backed away slowly. Didn't sleep much that night. Every tiny creak of the house made me sit up. In the morning, I figured maybe I was just psyching myself out. I walked out to the back deck to clear my head. And that's when I saw the footprints. They weren't mine. I checked. I'd been wearing shoes, and I definitely hadn't been outside barefoot. These were bare, wide, flat, with long toes, like someone had walked up and down the stairs barefoot in the middle of the night. The boards were still a little damp from dew, and the prints stood out clear as anything. I stood there staring at them, trying to convince myself it could have been an animal. Maybe a raccoon with huge feet and a weird walking pattern? Sure, why not? That night, I locked everything. Windows, doors, even the one tiny window above the kitchen sink. I moved a chair in front of the back door and left my flashlight and the old carving knife on the kitchen table right next to me. I sat there in the dark, just watching the glass. For hours, nothing happened. Eventually, I passed out around midnight. Then at 3:17 a.m., I woke up to this soft, steady tapping. It was coming from the living room window, the one right above the stairs on the back side of the cabin. I slid out of bed and stayed low, trying not to make a sound. I crawled across the floor into the hallway and peeked around the corner into the living room. The window was cracked open, just a little. I'd forgotten to shut it after airing out the place earlier that day, and there, through the gap, I saw fingers. They were thin and pale, with long, twitchy movements, just sort of fluttering against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. The nails looked dirty, like they'd been digging in something. I jumped up and slammed the window shut with both hands. The hand vanished instantly, like it had been yanked away. I locked it, stepped back, and didn't move again for the rest of the night. My legs were shaking. In the morning, I saw greasy smudges on the outside of the window. One partial print, too. I didn't go near it, just stuffed a towel into the window frame and nailed a blanket over the whole thing. The rest of the day, I couldn't stop pacing. Every creak made me flinch. I thought about walking into the woods, maybe trying to find the neighbor my dad mentioned, but the forest stretched in every direction and I didn't even have a real compass. What if I got turned around? What if I didn't make it back before dark? So I stayed. That night, I dragged a blanket into the front room and sat with my back to the wall, knife in my lap, flashlight on, beam aimed straight down the hallway. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard footsteps on the roof. They weren't fast or loud, just slow and steady, one step, then another. I looked up, heart in my throat, tracking the sound as it moved from above the living room, over the kitchen, then straight over my head. Then it stopped. A few minutes later, something slammed into the side of the cabin, hard, like a full body hitting the wall. Then again, and again. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Then came the whispering, not like someone talking, more like muttering, low and scratchy, like someone breathing through clenched teeth. It moved around the outside of the cabin, started near the bedroom, then near the back door, then right up against the front. I crawled to the bathroom and locked the door behind me, sat in the tub with the flashlight aimed at the door. The whispering went on for a while, then it faded. I didn't come out until the sun was shining through the bathroom window. Called my dad on the landline, told him he needed to come get me. He didn't ask a single question, just said, "Stay put, I'm on my way." I waited in the front room with the key in my hand and the flashlight on my lap, staring at the door. At exactly 10:41 a.m., someone knocked. 3 short knocks, then silence, then again. I looked through the peephole. No one was there, but the knocking didn't stop. When my dad's car finally rolled into the driveway, I didn't even hesitate. I ran out the door without even looking back. He didn't say a word. We just left. They never found anything, never filed a report. Now, the cabin's listed online, gets 5-star reviews. People say it's peaceful, remote, perfect for reconnecting with nature. I wonder if any of them hear the tapping, or the whispers, or if they don't. I was 27 when I moved into my Uncle Ray's old place. He'd died out there the summer before. Heart attack, they said. Dropped dead right on the front porch. It was my mom who called to tell me. She didn't sound shaken. Honestly, she sounded like someone who'd been expecting bad news for a while and was relieved it was over. When I told her I'd move in, she let out this weird little sigh, like she was glad someone was taking the place, but didn't want to say why. Nobody else in the family wanted it. My cousin Mark joked about it being haunted, then immediately said, kidding, in the most unconvincing voice I've ever heard. Mom didn't say anything like that directly, but she did make this one offhand comment that stuck with me. She said, "The land's not cursed exactly," then trailed off like she wasn't sure that was true. Changed the subject real quick too. The cabin was out in the Blue Ridge area of Avery County, tucked way back into the woods. You couldn't see it from the road. Hell, calling that narrow strip of gravel a road was being generous. It was more like a suggestion of where to drive. My nearest neighbor was a retired preacher named Dale, who lived half a mile away and minded his own business. No cell service, no internet, just a gas station down in the valley where the guy behind the counter always looked like he was halfway through a bad dream. I showed up in early October. Crisp air, leaves turning, all that postcard stuff. But the place didn't feel welcoming. It wasn't run down or anything. Uncle Ray had kept it up okay. The roof sagged a little. The porch groaned when I stepped on it. And inside there was this old stuffed bobcat mounted near the door, staring across the room with those cloudy, faded glass eyes. That thing bothered me more than I want to admit. First night, I tried to make it feel like home. Opened some boxes, ate a can of ravioli straight from the tin, drank a lukewarm beer. I sat on the couch in the living room and listened, not to music or TV, just the silence. But this was a different kind of quiet than I was used to. No traffic, no humming appliances, no planes overhead, just the occasional pop of wood settling in the walls and my own breathing. It felt too quiet, like the house was listening back. Then, sometime around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch. Not quick, not scattered, slow, deliberate. Someone walking, heel to toe, across the wooden boards. I froze in bed, didn't even sit up, just stared at the ceiling and tried to make out any other sounds. The steps stopped near the front door. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. No retreating steps. No knock. No creak of the boards. Just a stillness that felt like pressure in my ears. I didn't move again until daylight started creeping in through the blinds. I finally got up, grabbed a flashlight even though the sun was rising, and walked out to the porch. Nothing there. No prints, no scuff marks. The dust on the porch hadn't even been disturbed. I told myself it was probably animals, deer or raccoons or some local wildlife I didn't know enough about yet. Next day, I drove into town to grab some groceries and supplies. At the gas station, the guy behind the counter asked for my ID when I bought a six-pack. He squinted at it, then said, "Matlock Ridge?" I nodded. "Yeah, just moved in." He paused for a beat too long. "You sleeping upstairs?" Yeah." He didn't say anything after that, just handed me my receipt and mumbled, "Don't stay out after dark. People get turned around up there." That night, I stayed up, made coffee around midnight just to be alert. No lights on, sat in the dark, waiting. Right around 2:30, I heard it again. Step, another step, then 3 more. Slow and steady. This time I moved to the living room and sat on the floor, back against the wall. Didn't peek out, just listened. Then something scraped against the porch floor, like metal, or maybe claws. Then a dragging sound, heavy, steady, across the boards. It stopped right outside the kitchen window. I held my breath until my lungs burned, then silence again. Next morning, I went around back to check. That's when I found them. Bones. Tiny ones, maybe bird or squirrel, arranged in a perfect circle, all pointing inward. Right next to the wood pile, I used a coal shovel to scoop them up and flung them deep into the trees. That afternoon, I called my mom. I didn't mention the bones, just told her I'd been hearing things at night. She went quiet for a few seconds, then said, "You know, your uncle stopped sleeping upstairs a while before he passed. Why, he said the cellar felt safer." What do you mean?" But she didn't answer, just said she had to go and hung up. That night, I shoved the couch in front of my bedroom door. I slept with a flashlight in one hand and a fire poker in the other. Every little creak made me flinch. Around 3, I heard shuffling again, then a low murmur. Could have been the wind, could have been someone talking. Then 3 slow knocks. Exactly at 3:12, in the morning the porch was empty, but hanging from the overhang was a string of twine with a handful of chicken bones tied like some kind of charm. I didn't even hesitate. I cut it down and threw it in the wood stove. By then I'd had enough. I packed a bag, planning to leave first thing, but when I got in the truck, it wouldn't start. Not even a sound, just that little I checked the battery, looked fine, no corrosion, wires were tight, went back inside to call for a tow. Phone was dead, plugged it in, no light, no charge, nothing. Then I heard it, the voice, coming from the woods. Curtis, my mother's voice, calling like she used to when I was a kid and she needed help carrying groceries. "Curtis, come help me." It sounded close, too close. Then again, deeper this time, almost mechanical. "Curtis!" I backed up and slammed the door, locked it, found some nails and a hammer and sealed the windows, dragged a bookcase in front of the back door. Then I sat in the hallway, poker ready, heart pounding. At 1:48 a.m., the roof creaked, not just once, it creaked with weight. Footsteps walking from the front to the back, then the sound of nails or claws scraping across the shingles. Deliberate. Slow, the breathing came next. Close, right on the other side of the front door. Then it moved. Back door, kitchen window, bedroom. It circled the house, slowly, like it was testing every side. Then the voice again. "Curtis, open the door. It's Mom." Perfect imitation, but off, like it had been practiced. "I made dinner. Don't make me wait." I stood up slowly. The fire poker was slick in my hands from sweat. The voice moved to the back. Then the cellar door, 2 loud bangs. Then nothing. I didn't sleep. At dawn, it stopped. I stepped outside. The porch was quiet. But on the boards, the bones were back. This time arranged to spell one word. Stay. I didn't argue. I got in the truck. It started on the first try. As I pulled down the path, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The front door was wide open. I swear I had locked it, but I didn't go back.